Is a major Miami Dolphins trade coming over the next couple of weeks? I am Nick Roloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. The Dolphins rumors were set ablaze by one coming of Slick Rick. Yes, Slick Rick Scoops came in with a tweet on Friday afternoon saying, breaking, big trade for the Dolphins. Dolphins are trading away an all-pro player. And a lot of Dolphins fans saw this, including myself, and was like, whoa, what do you mean a Dolphins trade is coming, one featuring an all-pro player? And before we talk more about this, I do want to mention, as some people out there might be skeptical of Slick Rick, and I can understand why. It's not like he's an NFL insider that shoots 1,000% from the field, but he gets legit scoops, folks. He has been right about a lot of things. He has good ties with the New York Giants. He was in on the Javon Holland signing before it actually became official. I'm not going to come on here and say that because Slick Rick said the Dolphins are trading away an all-pro player, that a trade is absolutely going to be going down over the next week. But I do think it is something Dolphins fans cannot just throw away and say, okay, this is not going to happen. So I'm vigilant and I'm keeping my eye out on this. We'll discuss who the trade could be here in just a second. But help me out, folks. The bosses were on my case this Sunday morning, as we are filming this on Sunday, April 13th, said that we need to get more likes on the show. Okay. They challenged us to 400. I would like to avoid being yelled at by the bosses. Can you help me out? Give me 400 likes, please. Be greatly appreciated. All right, when it comes to Dolphins players that could be an all-pro, listen, that is the question here. When Slick Rick tweaks out all-pro, you think of two players specifically. Now, Jason Sanders technically is an all-pro, but I don't think Miami is getting a big trade done for their kicker. So, obviously, people are thinking about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey because it ain't going to be Jason Sanders. So, when the Dolphins are potentially trading an all-pro, minds go to Tyreek Hill and they go Jalen Ramsey. Now, one makes a lot more sense than the other, that being Tyreek Hill. I mean, we've talked about it kind of a lot this offseason, right? On if Tyreek Hill is requesting a trade, if the Dolphins should trade Tyreek Hill. Either way, if there's a big-time trade rumor surrounding the Dolphins, the most logical answer is that it's Tyreek Hill. One is because all the trouble that he has caused this offseason and drama on social media and potentially in the locker room after that trade request in week 18 after the New York Jets game, but also because this wide receiver room, it wouldn't be as good, obviously, but it would survive without Tyreek Hill. It's hard to replace his production, his speed, the fear that he puts into opposing defenses and schemes. But if you had a wide receiver top three as Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, and Nick Westbrook-Ikini, it wouldn't be good, but it wouldn't be horrible. It would rank somewhere for me between 17 and 20 in terms of NFL wide receiver units. So it's not like it would be one of the worst in the NFL. And I've been very open about this over the last week or so. I think the Miami Dolphins should trade Tyreek Hill. I have just simply had enough of his antics off the football field, whether it's tweeting on social media or, unfortunately, the situation that occurred last week, which I don't know the full details. It's a he said, she said situation, but police responded to his place for potential assault involving his wife, who is now filing for divorce, by the way. So there's just a lot circulating Tyreek Hill, and I think it's better off if Miami just rids themselves of Hill and moves on and potentially takes some draft capital back, whether it's this year or next year. But what say you? Should the Dolphins trade Tyreek Hill or should they keep him? If you think they should trade him, type T for trade. If you think they should keep him for 2025, type K for keep. Pin comment. You want to answer it, scroll down, let the YouTube ad plays and answer today's question. Well, if we were trading Tyreek Hill, the next logical question we would ask is, where is he going and what are we getting in return? Because that's really the worth it here. Is it worth trading him if you're getting a good return? Well, Barry Jackson went around the league, the Miami Herald insider, and said that the Dolphins could potentially get a 2026 conditional third-round pick that could get bumped up to a second based off performances and incentives. It's basically the same exact compensation that the Raiders got for Davante Adams when they traded him last year at the deadline to the New York Jets. And I will say this when it comes to a Tyreek Hill trade. If you are trading Tyreek Hill for a pick that is next year and nobody is offering you a pick in this 2025 NFL draft, then it would make more logical sense to wait to make the deal after June 1st. Why is that? Well, if you're just joining the channel and have not seen the videos we put out on Tyreek Hill trade rumors, it is because of his contract details. He has a $27.7 million cap hit this year, but if he gets traded before June 1st, that cap number actually rises by $600,000 to 28.3, and he wouldn't be on the team. So it's a dead cap hit of this season of 28.3. Now that cap hit moves all the way down to $12.7 million, so you would save a good amount of money on this year's cap if you traded him in June 1st. And he is under contract for one more year following this one in 2026, where he has a $51.8 million cap hit, but not a lot of it's guaranteed, and you could actually save $36 million if you cut him following this season. So if Miami kept Hill and didn't trade him, this would likely be the last season he's on the Dolphins anyway. But if you are trading him and not getting a pick, the reason why I think it should be after June 1st is probably because it doesn't make sense to rise his cap number if he's not going to be on the team this year. So where could he be traded? I think there are three logical destinations at this point for Tyreek Hill, and I'd be intrigued to see if any of these teams would actually take the swing on Tyreek. The Green Bay Packers desperately need wide receiver help for Jordan Love. They've had a collection of solid wide receivers, and Tavian Wicks, Romeo Dobbs. Like, they've had guys, but they need that dude to help Jordan Love and be that number one guy. So I think Green Bay could be interested. New England has always needed wide receiver help. You wonder if the Dolphins would be willing to trade Tyreek Hill inside the division, but New England could always spin the tires on a wide receiver. And I think the Chargers are a good option. Ladd McConkey's very good, yeah, but they need another guy to help Justin Herbert on the perimeter. So I think the Chargers and Packers would make the most sense with the Tyreek Hill trade. We'll keep you updated on if something actually pops up. And if Tyreek Hill did get traded, we would go live, so make sure you are subscribed. But the other person it could be, if it is an all-pro Miami is trading away, is Jalen Ramsey. And coming up here in just a second, we're going to talk about what a Jalen Ramsey trade would look like and if Miami should even entertain the idea if he is on the trade block. But we are sponsored by Game Time. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Dolphins Today. I get my tickets, whether it's a sporting event, concert, comedy show, with Game Time. And with the NBA season coming to a close, make sure you get your tickets to the playoffs with Game Time. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee. It takes the guesswork out of buying tickets for the NBA playoffs. And they have so many great last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets, whether it is for a sports, concerts, comedy show, theater, and the whole 9 yards. All-in pricing is another great feature. Toggling that feature shows the total price of your ticket up front with no surprise fees at checkouts. And they have seat views that show you a full panoramic view in your seat before you buy your tickets, so you know exactly where you're sitting. No stanchion, no billboard, no pole will be in your way. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, could that all-pro player Slick Rick was referring to be Jalen Ramsey on the move? I did not think this is a possibility whatsoever, but many other content creators and fans of the Dolphins on Twitter/X speculated that tweet was referring to Jalen Ramsey. And to me, that just makes absolutely no sense. Why on earth would the Dolphins ever trade Jalen Ramsey right now? You could argue the biggest need on this roster is another cornerback opposite of Jalen Ramsey. Defensive line is a need, but you need a second corner after you trade it or you cut Kendall Fuller this offseason. If you traded Jalen Ramsey, you would have Kader Kohu, Storm Duck, Cam Smith, and Ethan Bonner. That would be the worst cornerback room heading into the NFL draft in the NFL without a question. You desperately need to keep Jalen Ramsey this season. And I could understand if you were going full rebuild to entertain a Ramsey trade if you get offered a good package. But are you going full rebuild? And if you are, Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel should not be spearheading these decisions. So that's a whole nother part of this conversation as well. And we'll talk about Ramsey more here in just a second. But hey, if a trade actually went down, I mentioned it earlier, we would be going live on the channel and we will be dropping a video immediately when that happens. Subscribe for videos on all Dolphins news, Dolphins rumors. We'll have you covered with everything you need here at Dolphins Today, so join the channel. It's not like Jalen Ramsey's contract is bad to where you want to move off of him. He just got a contract extension in the last 365 days, if you remember correctly. And his contract this season is good. He's only got a $16.6 million cap hit, low base salary. You see on the right side of your screen his cap hit for the next 4 years and his dead cap. Obviously, after 2025, you don't have that much dead cap on his contract if you got out of it. So following this season, it's really not a bad contract to get out of, which is why I don't think Miami should be in a rush to trade him this season. And it's not like Ramsey had a bad season last year, right? He had a solid statistical season in coverage. He also played in all 17 games, which was impressive. Allowed a high completion percentage, yes, but only 2 touchdowns. Had a couple INTs, 5 PBUs. QB rating when targeted was a little bit high, 93.5. Yeah, it's not his best season, and Ramsey is held to such a high standard because he's been a top 5 corner in the National Football League practically every year of his career since he was drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars out of Florida State in 2016. Like I mentioned, it's not his best, but it's still something that Miami desperately needs to hold on to. Their cornerback room is so bare that they need him. Like, if they had a solid CB2, I could justify trading Jalen Ramsey and then drafting a corner in the first round. But you don't have a solid CB2. You actually have absolutely nobody. So why on earth would you ever trade him? It makes no sense in my opinion. But let me know. Most likely to be dealt. If Slick Rick was correct and the Dolphins are trading away an all-pro player from their roster before the draft or after the draft, is it Tyreek Hill or Jalen Ramsey? Type TH for Tyreek, type JR for Jalen Ramsey. Listen, I don't think it's Jalen Ramsey. I think it would be Tyreek Hill. Maybe I'm wrong, and Jalen Ramsey has quietly requested a trade away from the Miami Dolphins. That would suck if it's true, but I would not trade Jalen Ramsey at all. I wouldn't. I will say this, though. If a team offered you a flat-out first-round pick in exchange for Jalen Ramsey, it would kind of be hard to say no, if we're going to be honest. Because here's the situation. Yes, Ramsey is very good, and the Dolphins need a corner bad and would be in a bad spot in this depth chart if they traded Ramsey. He's 30 years old. He has 4 years left on his contract. So are you keeping him through his 34-year-old season? That's my first question. Question number 2. You traded a third-round pick to get Jalen Ramsey from the Rams a couple years ago. So your return on investment would be absolutely terrific. You traded a third for him. You had good years with him a couple years in Miami. And then you got a first-round pick in return before he started to really decline in a bad way. So it would be hard to say no, but I still lean keeping him without a question, even if I was offered a first-round pick straight up at like 24, 25 from like the Vikings or Texans or something like that, because you need that position so bad. And I think you should be drafting a corner in the first round to pair with Jalen Ramsey. But I'll say this. If you traded Jalen Ramsey, let's just say for the 24th overall pick from the Minnesota Vikings who need a corner, would you draft 2 corners in the first round? And in that hypothetical, you'd have 2 first-rounders and a 48th overall pick. Probably 2 of your first 3 picks would have to be corners. Or maybe you sign Asante Samuel Jr. in free agency and then draft a corner in the first round. Like, I really like these 4 for Miami. We've talked about Will Johnson and Jahdae Barron. I would take one of those 2 on the board at 13 right now. Sign me up for Will Johnson. I want him. If he doesn't get picked before us, I want him at 13. If he does, I'd probably go Jahdae Barron at 13. But if you were picking in the mid-20s, if you traded away Jalen Ramsey for a pick there, Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky is an option in that range. Trey Amos is a fringe first, second-round guy that Miami could be interested in. Either way, if the Dolphins do or do not trade Jalen Ramsey, I am a major advocate for the Dolphins going with a corner in the first round. That needs to happen. I wouldn't hate a defensive lineman, but I lean those two positions over an offensive lineman unless Will Campbell or Armand Membu fell to pick number 13. And we'll have you covered with everything surrounding this football team leading up to the NFL draft and all offseason long. Nick Roloff here with the best coverage possible on the Dolphins. So hit that sub button.